I'm Edie Lush, Executive Editor at Hub Culture. It is Davos 2026, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with Azeem Azhar. How are you?
I am doing really well, Edie, thank you.
Excellent. Founder of Exponential View, investor into technology startups. Now, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise.
So almost every building along the promenade has something to do with artificial intelligence. Over 45 at least sessions within the Congress Center on this topic. Where do you think the conversation is now compared to where we were, for example, a year ago?
The conversation has moved into a practical space. Bosses, I've been hanging out in the Congress Center, so it's been CEOs and chief technology officers. Bosses are asking questions like, how do we really get this to work across our companies? They've all been experimenting for a couple of years, and I think they're a little bit impatient. They need to give the technology just a bit longer. It's only been 3 years since ChatGPT, but the conversation is really about those practical things. What do we do for our people? How do we make sure this works? Who gets training? What will happen to jobs? What will happen to our graduate hiring? What will happen to career progression? These are really practical nuts and bolts conversations. And you may remember 2 or 3 years ago, the discussion was about science fiction. Will the robots climb out of the data centers and murder us in our sleep?
Right.
And
Doom. I remember that one.
That's right.
The probability of doom.
Yeah.
So, but I love that when you wrote that using AI in the workplace is like snowboarding. You have to keep moving or you fall over. And I have a feeling that at least the companies that I've been speaking to that are employing AI at some kind of scale do seem to be seeing pretty vast productivity gains.
I agree with you. Look, on the snowboarding thing, I have to be honest, I've never stood up successfully on a snowboard. It is falling without style in my case. You do have to reinvent what you do. In my team, if we're doing the same thing 3 months in a row, we kind of feel something's gone wrong because the technology is getting so much better, so much more, so quickly, and we're getting better. Now, to your point about big companies, I've actually been really impressed with a couple of conversations I've had. I can't share who the companies are, but one was a particularly slow-moving business in the investment space, and when they described to me how their investment committee now uses AI, I was really impressed. So it's very, very clear that there are pockets of success that we can talk about, and those pockets will get copied and replicated by others in those industries.
So tell me, what are they using it for in the investment committee?
This is the amazing part. They have it as an investment committee member, but they tune it to the biases of the members on the committee in that meeting. So if you're missing the particularly analytical member for whatever reason, you can ask the AI to be more analytical. If you're missing the one who thinks about trends or strategy, you can ask it to take that role. So you fill in the cognitive biases of the committee and you get to better collective decisions. At least that's the theory.
That's fascinating. I was listening to somebody from Dow Chemical talking about how they're using it in even their biggest facilities, one the size of the island of Manhattan, using AI to predict which machines might need maintenance quicker than others, saving already $5 million. So it does seem to be coming, perhaps in some areas more than others.
It is definitely coming in some areas. Your Dow Chemical example, I think it shows one way you need to think about it. It's in the largest facilities. What we saw companies do 2 or 3 years ago, they started nibbling at the edges at customer service or data processing. It's really hard to imagine how you have a transformative effect on a company if you do it on the data processing side of the business or in the customer service. But you zero into the investment committee, you zero into your largest plants, you actually have a chance of getting an outsized return. And certainly that's been our experience at Exponential View. We use AI in the core of what we do, which is research, it's writing, it's communication, it's challenging our hypotheses. We also use it, of course, in customer support and in data processing. But at the heart of it, if you don't start with what matters with your business, how will it ever matter to you?
So I wonder where else you're seeing interesting uses of artificial intelligence coming at this enterprise level. I spoke with OpenAI. This was more on a kind of B2B or person level, us using it. They were saying that the largest number of users are in the US and India, no surprise. largest amount where it's really gone into the population, the Netherlands and Singapore. Interesting to me, the folks who are using the most advanced, the most agents are in Morocco, Pakistan, and Vietnam. So for me, that was interesting, but it's a person level rather than at a corporate level.
It is, but I think there's also an additional problem that we face with the whole of the AI economy. This was OpenAI's own data. We have no idea whether the fact that more people in Morocco are using the advanced models is because in America they're using a more advanced model from a competitor, that the product isn't suitable for Americans and people in Silicon Valley. We have no idea how to interpret that data, whether it comes from OpenAI or whether it comes from one of their competitors. Now, the AI economy is manifestly going to be a major part of economic growth over the next 10 or 15 years. It's manifestly going to be a large part of global GDP, and yet we know far less about it than we do about the orange juice futures market out of Florida. And this data that you've just shared now is a great example. We are all trying to make sense, you, me, public market investors, of what's really happening with AI. And in a sense, we're doing it by reading tea leaves. You've read some OpenAI tea leaves. I read some Anthropic tea leaves. Public market investors are looking at rumours on X. That's not an adequate situation. That will change. It's something I'm working on at the moment to bring much more reasoned, balanced clarity to help people understand what's really going on in this economy.
So talk a little bit about that idea of the AI economy, because we know what an oil economy is, we know what an orange juice economy is, but how do you measure the AI economy? What are the early ways we can look at that?
It's not as tasty as the orange juice economy. Let's get started with that point. Yeah, maybe the chocolate economy, it's even tastier. So the AI economy really starts with the electrons that you need in order to power the chips. The chips then power models that help businesses make decisions, develop better products, get those products in front of customers. So the AI economy is, to use a technical term, full stack, and the people who can produce the electrons through gas power plants or renewables or solar at low cost have an advantage over those who have to pay more for it. Those who can't power data centers are disadvantaged. Those who can't get the chips are disadvantaged, and those whose companies don't have the wherewithal to transition from pen and paper to spreadsheets and then to AI will be at a disadvantage.
So let's talk about the cost of energy, because we heard from Satya Nadella saying that the countries and the companies with cheap energy will win the AI race. Europe has some of the most expensive expensive electricity. Can Europe compete?
Well, let's take issue slightly with what Satya said. It's clearly an advantage to have low-cost electrons. But what really matters ultimately is what can you do with the outputs of the AI and how much profit can you drive from that? So where is AI going to help? AI is going to help advanced, sophisticated industries where R&D matters, where IP, intellectual property, matters. And the reason that's the case is because those industries tend to have very, very high margins. So if your trade-off is an economy with very low cost energy, but really a basic industrial or agrarian industries, I don't think you're going to do as well as a country like Switzerland that has higher electricity prices, but absolutely fantastic IP-based businesses, particularly in pharmaceuticals. So lower energy costs are going to be strategically advantageous, but they are really not the only sheriff in town.
I want you to talk about energy and AI. That has been a discussion for some time, but it continues to dominate. I mean, I had 2 interviews here about putting data centers in space to deal with some of the challenges. I'd never heard of it, and it turns out Elon Musk has been talking about it for a while, so that shows you how much I know. But I wonder where you see that conversation now and where the AI, energy, water equation is.
Well, we're in the maelstrom of clickbaity headlines right now and pearl clutching and moral panics. Yes, there are issues with the infrastructure build out only because we weren't building any infrastructure in the United States and across Europe. But what we're going to look at this period from, if we look back at this period from say 10 years from now, we will think of it as a moment where we literally and metaphorically electrified our energy systems by bringing them up to scratch and bringing them up to date. It's really clear that it's unsustainable for AI companies to build data centers powered by coal in communities where the people don't want them, draining local aquifers but making very little impact on water usage across the US as a whole. And so we've already seen first Microsoft and then OpenAI commit to community-oriented data center builds, where they're committing to ensuring that household electricity bills don't go up. They're committed to ensuring they will, in Microsoft's case, leave water tables completely untouched, and so on and so forth. Of course, they didn't get it right when they got started, because you've got other things to worry about when you get started. But by the end of 2026, this will largely have been dealt with. And I, for one, really, really do believe that having clean electrons, and lots of them, is foundational to sustainable prosperity. Everything we do in life requires energy, and the best way of getting that energy is clean electrons. And this boost from the AI companies is what will help the US and across Europe us deliver that.
So you mentioned the labor market, and you mentioned it had been a conversation that you've had with some of the executives that you're speaking to, which is great. And then we've had Dario from Anthropic come and talk about it. There's been a lot of discussion about jobs. There's been some worry about young graduates not being able to get jobs. I did hear some numbers about some phantom jobs that should have appeared. That if you look at economics, economic history, the growth that we've seen in the world in terms of GDP has usually been associated with a certain number of jobs created. And last year that didn't happen. Now, if you can or not link that to artificial intelligence, but the concern is still there. It hasn't gone away. How do you look at this?
Well, the evidence is the first place to start. And if we'd had this conversation 6 months ago, the evidence was really misty and murky. I think we're seeing a little bit more evidence that young graduate hiring is slowing down in occupations that could be exposed to AI. I also, in conversations I've had with people in management consultants who are, whether they're one of the hirers of graduates from expensive colleges and universities, and they're saying, well, we don't need as many analysts, which is the most junior entry role on a project, as we used to, because we can use AI. You can start to put these things together. I still think it's a little bit early to make a macro claim, because there are so many other factors in the labour market. And think about it from the perspective of a boss. It's 2026, you've got an incredibly volatile American leadership that keeps changing the rules of trade, changing the rules of how the economy works. You might be in a country with a heavy fiscal overhang and with unfavourable demographics. And in all of this volatility, we've thrown in AI, which, however brilliant it is definitely a disruptive force. At that point, you want to move slightly sotto voce, slightly quietly, slightly more carefully. And a graduate is for life, not just for Christmas. When you hire a young person, you're asking them to be there for 3-5 years. And if you've got short-term uncertainty, it does make sense to pause on some of that hiring. Now, I haven't seen evidence that disentangles that causality from the AI-based causality. I think it is highly plausible that AI is casting a pallor on graduate hiring, but I would also say that while that's plausible, I think it's likely that there are other factors that are weighing at least as heavily. Now, that's of that's no comfort if you're one of those graduates or one of their parents. But again, this is something where I feel the economy will respond, and firms will respond by realizing you still need a pipeline of young minds to keep your firms fresh, and that the economy will still need people to do jobs. It's just staying up 19 hours a day in the office working on Excel spreadsheets, as one might have done in a consultancy, is no longer one of those jobs.
Right. Okay. Any themes I haven't asked you about that you want to make sure that have come to you this week?
Look, the one thing that has really shown up very, very concretely has been the notion that the rules-based order that governed international business has come to an end, and that countries have to think not so much transactionally, but certainly strategically driven by their interests. Countries need to be very sophisticated about the layers of partnerships they build with other nations. And that theme was the biggest theme alongside this AI and work theme that we've touched on that emerged both in my conversations within the Congress Centre, but also as I've been walking up and down the promenade of Davos.
And speaking of that, any personal reflections, anything you're taking away?
I'm going to bring my trainers with me next year. My feet are absolutely killing, 17,000 steps a day in snow boots. I really, really want to soak my feet in a nice hot bath, which I hopefully we'll be able to do later this evening.
Right, well, we'll let you go on with your evening. Thank you very much, Azeem, for stopping by Hub Culture, and I'm Edie Lush.